An accomplished author, Demartini is a featured philosopher in the internationally acclaimed book, The Secret. This is Captains of Industry. Let's kick off with your story, and I love this part. The zero to hero always resonates with people out there. So, John, can you take us back to the early days and perhaps to those troubled years when you were around about 14 and decided to leave school?
Well, I was told in first grade by my first grade teacher that in front of my parents that I'm afraid your son has learning difficulties and disabilities and dyslexia. I'm afraid he'll never be able to read, write, communicate, never amount to anything, never go very far in life. So although I made it through elementary school with the help of the smartest kids by asking questions, by the time I got to 13, 14, I ended up dropping out of school. So then I went on an adventure. I kind of lived on the streets and panhandled and hitchhiked and did the things that the 1960 kids did, and found myself wanting to go to California and to Hawaii to surf. So I basically kind of took off and was kind of a wild spirit, and went on my way to Hawaii eventually. But then when I turned 17, I almost died.
I see the stories about strychnine. What actually happened in terms of, you've got to pause there for a moment, in terms of almost dying?
Well, I was in those days trying to expand my consciousness through natural means, if that makes any sense.
I thought we were going to go down this path.
So I was experimenting, you might say, and I ended up consuming a plant that grew in Hawaii that added color to your experience, but at the same time also was surrounded by a strychnine material. And I accumulated that, and it locked up my fingers and toes, and it eventually stopped my diaphragm. So I was about 3.5 days unconscious, living in a tent at the time. I found myself in a tent. And
did you have an out-of-body experience at this time, something life-changing? I mean, I know Paul Bragg enters the scenario just a little later, but anything that happened while you were pretty much unconscious for 3 days?
You know, I sort of unconscious. I don't have much information on that, but I just know finally a lady who was living back in the jungle came down this path and heard me moaning, I guess, and came into where my tent was and opened up the flap, and I remember her saying, "Oh my God, you're dehydrated. You're." Anyway, she ran off and came back with some liquids and helped me kind of recover. And I basically pretty catharsed in that tent, and was sort of kind of delusionary kind of thing. And she helped me recover. And when she stayed with me for about 3.5 days there at the tent, clean up the tent, and it was pretty messy, and then helped me go to this little health food store and helped me get carrot juice. It's the only thing I could stomach. And at that little health food store, I was sitting there having some food, and I was leaving one day, and I saw a little flyer on a door that said special guest speaker Paul C. Bragg, Sunset Recreation Hall, Waimea Bay. And there's just something about the picture and something about it that made me intuitively say, I ought to go to that. And 1 hour with this one man at that class, with his one message, inspired me and changed my life. Well, he basically said that we have a body, we have a mind, and we have a soul, and the body must be guided by the mind, and the mind must be guided by the soul to maximize your awareness and potential in life, and that everybody has an extraordinary power inside to do something extraordinary in the world and has something amazing, and they have a genius inside. And I've been told I would never read, write, communicate. I never read until I was 18 years old. So when he said that, all I know is I was brought to tears. I was inspired. And he then gave us an opportunity to scan our lives and think about what we wanted to dedicate our lives to. And as I sat there on the floor, I thought, what I would love to do is like this man. I'd love to travel the world and research, how to maximize life and to teach. I mean, it's the farthest thing from my thought up until that point. But after meeting that man, that night I set the dream to do what I'm doing today.
And you went back to school?
I ended up...
How did you conquer the dyslexia?
Well, that was an interesting game. I first studied with this man for 3 weeks, every morning. He told me to say to myself, to overcome my learning problems, to say to myself every single day that I am a genius and I apply my wisdom. And he made me say it over and over and over again until it kind of stuck. He said, if you say that every single day and never miss a day, sooner or later the cells of your body will tingle with it, so will the world. So I started doing it. I've never missed a day in 38 years. That led me to desire to go back to Texas where my parents were living. So I flew back to LA, I hitchhiked back to Texas, and there my parents taught me into taking a GED, high school equivalency test. So I took this test and I was guessing. I was just saying I'm a genius and I apply my wisdom. I was just closing my eyes and guessing, and I passed. I had nothing to lose, so I passed. And so then I suggested that I take a college entrance exam, and I guessed again, and somehow I passed. I always say thank you, you know, in the universe. And then I took my first class in college, and I got a 27. I failed, and I was really devastated. And I remember driving home just crying. And I went and curled up on the fetal position on the living room floor, and my mom came in and she said, "Son, what happened?" I blew it. And I told her, I said, "I guess I'll never read, write, or communicate, never amount to thing, never go very far in life." And she didn't know what to say, so finally she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "Son, whether you become a great teacher, healer, and philosopher and travel the world like you dream, whether you go back to Hawaii and ride big waves, or whether you end up on the streets panhandling as a bum, like you've done, I just want to let you know that your father and I are going to love you no matter what."
But where were your family when you were panhandling on the streets?
Well, they were living in Texas, and they, believe it or not, they, when I was about 14 years old, my parents knew I wasn't going to make it to school, and they knew I was doing well in surfing and sport. So they wrote up a notarized piece of paper and literally said, "You keep this, you make sure you have at least $13 in your pocket," and they dropped me off on Interstate 10, and go live your dream. They somehow believed in my potential, even though I wasn't going to make it to school. And I did do an adventurous life. I hitchhiked to California, Mexico, and lots of places to surf. But I just wasn't making it to school.
Did you stay in touch?
I would communicate with them periodically by a telephone. But I had this free spirit. They kind of trained me to be autonomous. And I kind of had the ability to figure out things. I was kind of resourceful. And so when I moved back home, they were very supportive. They were inspired that I might try to school. And when I failed that test, and when she said that, my hand went into a fist, and I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading. I'm going to master this thing called studying and teaching. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to travel whatever distance. I'm going to pay whatever price to give my service of love. And that's the beginning of my teaching.
So let's come to today and to Dr. John Demartini. You are known across the globe. You travel 360 days of the year. Do you ever take any time out for yourself? Give us a picture of what your life is like today.
Well, you know, people very commonly project what their ideal of life would be onto me. And they say, well, you know, why would you do that, or how could you do that, or this kind of thing? And what about this? And they're usually projecting what they think they would need in their life. But I can't think of anything I would rather do than what I do. This is what I love doing. So when I get up in the morning, I can't wait to get up and do what I do. I love researching human behavior. I study everything I can get my hands on, anything that might help an individual maximize their life. I love writing. I write every day. I wrote another article this morning before I came here. And I love traveling, and I love teaching. Those are the four things I love doing. And so time off for me is going to do one of those things, if that makes any sense. That's what I am basically focused on. Since I was 17, this is what I've wanted to do.
Talk to us about the ship, because part of your home is a ship. You've got to give us a bit more color on that front.
Well, I said to myself since I was in my 20s, the universe is my playground, the world is my home, every country is a room in the house, and every city is another platform to share my heart and soul. And I remember reading in Socrates, Plato's writings, that he said, I'm not a man of Corinth, I'm not a man of Athens, I'm a citizen of the world. And I always loved that. I always kept that. And I always wanted to be that the world was my family and the world was my home. So I was reading in the Robb Report, which is a magazine in the States, about a ship, a condominium ship that was a private ship that was going to be owned by a group of entrepreneurs that was going to sail around the world and go to every port around the world. And so when I saw that, I thought, wow, that would be perfect. That would be the ideal home, because it goes to every country and every port in the world that you can get to. And that way you can travel the world without leaving home. And they call it the world, and they actually advertised that every country's a room in the house. It was exactly what that affirmation that I had been saying. And so about 7.5 years ago, I purchased on there and moved on and became one of the owners of it. And so I'm not on there all the time. My wife passed away about 5.5 years ago. and she lived on there pretty full time, about 10 months out of the year. And so when she was alive, I was on there a lot more. But now that she's passed, I just pretty well full travel. And then I pop on whenever the cities happen to match and I can get in between my travels. It's a very luxurious lifestyle. It's very nice. But if I have a choice between speaking and doing what I do, I always take the speaking opportunities.
Let's stay with your wife's death 5 years ago.
Yes.
How do you rationalize death? Because in unlocking human potential, or maximizing human potential, as you put it, how do you deal with this very, very black hole? Is it a higher being that you believe in? Is it the universe that you believe in? What got you through that phase?
Well, you know, I teach a class called the Breakthrough Experience, and this is where I pour out everything that I know that can help people break through limitations in their life. And in there, there's a segment that I do on dealing with grief and loss and any form of things that people think that they've lost, money or relationships or a child or something. And I developed a methodology to help people break through that. And luckily, I've been fortunate to learn how to do that, to know how to work through. But what I found is that we have sometimes project valuations onto people, and we put them on pedestals and infatuate with people sometimes. And other times we resent people or negate people. And anytime we infatuate or resent people, they run us. And anytime we love them and have a balanced perspective, we feel connected to them and feel love for them. And I found out that when we have love for somebody, we feel their presence. But when we're infatuated with somebody, we fear their loss. And when we resent somebody, we fear their gain. So with my wife, I have love for her. And I don't know how to describe it, but I can feel her presence. And so instead of a feeling of a loss, I just feel an honoring of the presence, because I am not the one to decide when she's to go. Sometimes we set up fantasies about when she should have gone and how old she was supposed to go, and then we compare our lives to these fantasies. But I know that if I was to pass, I would want her to live her life to the fullest and be inspired by her experience. And I know that's what she wanted for me, so I do my best to just live an inspired life and be grateful and feel her presence.